Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here, and today we're going to talk about Shinobu in the DPS build. So we're going to be using PJC, because obviously that should be her BIS. I've not done math for the other weapons, but the other 5-star swords don't look like they will work well on her, just based on a pre-analysis. Okay, so I'm just going to talk quickly about PJC, or rather her using PJC. So in terms of her role, is basically she's a sub-DPS in a Yelan Taser comp. For the details on the rotation EI etc, please refer to the Yelan Math Guide 5, but however, please note that we will swap the Raiden E and first Kazuha E in the rotation in Math Guide 5 in order to do double swirls with Hydro and Electro. Timing is a little tight for this because if you only have one U of Hydro and one U of Electro each applied, the Electro charge is going to take away more than half of it. So you have to be pretty fast to make sure that it doesn't decay. But I will also test it out to make sure that it's okay before changing it, even when Shinobu is not a sub-DPS build. Meaning, like, in general for Yelan Tasercom, if the timing is okay, doable, even for whole Kazuha E, whole E, then holding on to the E, then I will update the rotation accordingly. Like what I always do, right? We always do MF guides, and after the character is released, I will always test out the rotations to make sure everything is working well. Because the math figures are always there. The figures wouldn't go wrong because they are all based on established damage formulas. Alright, so just to share, in the Yelan Math Guide 5 in the Yelan Tasercom, I only did Hydro Swirl just to ensure that Yelan gets the buff. But if it can work for double without the timing being too tight, even for a Kazuha holding on to E, then yeah, it's definitely doable. Okay? Now, with that being established, it means that there are some buffs for Shinobu, the Kazuha buffs, for not just some of her E, but basically all of her kit. So with that in mind, let's look at the damage that she has. You have 4 Thunder Silver here with dealing up to like 224k. You have 2 Thunder Fury, 2 TOTM dealing 208k. 218k, sorry. So these are the EM values, the ER values, and the 20% HP threshold. Okay, so for ER is obviously with 4 emblem, and I will only recommend to use it if you're not using her with Raiden. Otherwise, with Raiden, you don't really need ER on Shinobu. So with PJC in a Shinobu DPS build and a 4-piece Thunder Silver, her damage is not too bad for a 4-star off-you. Within the same 12-second window, her damage is actually slightly higher than a C6 Fisher with Skyward Hub. If I compare C6 R5 versus C6 R5, i.e. the maximum damage potential. So C6 Fisher attack prod needs to prod at least 15 to 20 times to be on par. I can't really do a C0 Fisher to C0 Shinobu comparison unless I do math for C6, the full math for Fisher. This whatever I'm doing here is based on what my Fisher is actually dealing in game right now. Okay, I hope that's clear. So with that being said, right, I think she's not too bad, right? I mean, her damage is slightly higher than a C6 Fisher as a sub-DPS build. Fisher sub-DPS build. Shinobu sub-DPS build versus a Fisher sub-DPS build, she's actually doing slightly higher. Because you need to proc 15 to 20 times on the C6 attack, depending on your attack value, your crit damage, etc. But the one that whatever my Fisher has in game is pretty close to what Shinobu has, the stats. So it's a good thing that she's able to do slightly higher than a Fisher. And at the same time, she does provide some heals at it. So that's not too bad. I was quite surprised to see this do so well, to be honest. Or rather, okay, not say it's not that it's so well, but to do well. Not so well, but well. Because the first 2 Shinobu Math guys were not looking good for her, but at least now, it does look that like doing a sub-DPS build on her is worthwhile if you are able to accept the lower heals. And I'll talk more about the heals in the next section here, in section 4. But the next section here, Shinobu DPS build artifact comparison. I want to compare the artifacts. Why? because there's so many different options here, right? 2 Thunder Fury, 2 Tenacity, 4 Thunder Silver because this is a Taser comp, 2 Thunder Fury, 2 Nobles because most of the damage is coming from her burst, and obviously you have the 4 Emblem for comps where you do not have Razor. Sorry, not Razor. What am I talking about? For comps that you do not have Raiden. So you'll see that the damage difference, none of them are red, which means Thunder Silver does the best damage, right? Because it's Thunder Silver versus the others. And these are pretty much the same stats as before. So 4 Thunder Silver is always the best in a Taser comp, but it does have its condition, right? 2 Thunder Fury, Thundering Fury with 2 Tenacity is very close to 4 Thunder Silver. It's only 2 to 4% lower. You can see. While at the same time, it doesn't suffer from conditional damage boost. Honestly speaking, if you take in conditions, if you have a scenario where your Electro is decaying faster than your Hydro, which may be likely given the amount of Hydro application that Yelan is applying, you may run into a situation where some of the hits are not getting the 4 Taser effect. 4 Thunder Silver effect. It's possible, I cannot say for sure. I'm just saying that the possibility is there. Now, 2 Thunder Fury and 2 Nobles, together with the 4 Emblem with a 115 ER target, they're actually almost the same, if you notice. Their percentage comparison to 4 Thunder Silver is almost the same, which means that their actual performance is almost the same. But both are still lower than the 2 Thunder Fury and 2 Tenacity. So I will only recommend 4 Emblem if you're not using her with Raiden and you're not using a weapon with ER for Shinobu. Because 200 ER performs well, oh, and by the way, 200 ER performs worse than 150 ER even with 4 Emblem. Which is expected, right? Because you are taking away stats. First off, once you want to build ER on Shinobu, you are taking EM stats away. That's why you see that the base EM is 0. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, you are taking away rolls from CRCD into ER. So naturally, 200 ER performs worse, even if it gives you a bigger boost, slightly bigger boost from the 4 Emblem effect. The other thing is also that 200 ER is overkill for her because her Q cost is 16. She doesn't need 200 ER. 200 ER is really for 80 cost characters who are single element in the team. But if you are doing a Taser comp, typically it is better to do 2 Electro, especially if your Hydro has strong application. Alright, so I hope this is clear on the artifacts. Don't worry, in the TLDR I will do a final conclusion in terms of everything that I've covered here. Now let's look at the heals, the healing. So as expected, right, the heals aren't high, right? Especially at C0. I mean at C6, it's about 3.4 to 3.5k, but C0 is really low. Okay, let me just correct this. This is for 4 Thunder Silver, okay? The heal figure that you see here. So, to be honest, given that her heals were already low to begin with, the relative loss to her heals are not that great, absolute figure wise. But you need to be able to accept the low heals, right? Like 2.2k to 2.4k on the 4 Thunder Silver is really bad. 2.4 to 2.5k isn't that much of a difference, to be honest. But between the 2 Thundering Fury and 2 Tenacity versus the 4 Thunder Silver, which are the 2 top DPS artifacts, the heals are inversely proportional to their damage. And since it's just too small of a difference anyway, I would say which artifact build to use between the two really depends which artifacts you have better rolls on. But personally, I would lean towards 2 Thundering Fury and 2 Tenacity, since 4 Thunder Silver has its conditions, right? I mean, you have to be able to do more damage if you have conditions attached to it, to that particular set. But it doesn't do more damage. It is actually only, damage-wise, it's only 2 to 3%. Heal-wise, heals-wise, this is higher than this. Okay? In fact, you see the heals here are pretty much the same. That's why it's minus 5%. Sorry, this should be red. Okay, I don't have time to do my conditional formatting, so this is red because 2 tenacity and 2 thundering fury does heal more than 4 thunder silver. Okay, so this is how she performs in terms of her damage, in terms of the artifact comparison, in terms of how much she heals. Now let's look at the same thing, but this time around with C4 Yelan effect added on. Now damage wise is not significantly more per se, you get about 16 to 18k more damage. But the good thing is the 20% HP threshold is a lot more comfortable, especially if you use 2 tenacity with the 2 thundering fury. It's about 8k HP, so pretty alright. But bear in mind this is using PJC, so PJC does give you some HP boost. The damage difference across the different or the artifact builds are pretty much the same, so that's why I don't have a artifact comparison with the C4 Yelan effect. But if you compare her damage to Fisher, it's also further in her favor now. Unless C6 effect, Fisher's C6 effect is prone like 23 to 28 times. It's approximately about 8 more times. Because like I said, the difference in damage is about 16k between having C4 Yelan and not. And because I'm averaging the Fisher C6 effect, so be about 2k after factoring your CR. Okay, after factoring in the CR, it's 2k. My Fisher also does about 2.5k on the C6 Pro. With buffs, of course. So, unless you proc it 23 to 28 times to be on par with Shinobu's damage, I would say is higher than Fisher. Okay, now let's look at the healing amount. So now the healing looks a lot better, although it's still kinda low. With C4 Yelan, the heals on the best set is now 3k instead of 2.4k at C0, which does help really quite a fair bit, right? Because considering that you are focusing on Shinobu's DPS, her being able to heal 3k with 8 procs, that's like what? That's 24k heal. 24k heal, basically you can think of it like Kokomi healing 4k 6 times. So it's 3k 8 times and 4k 6 times. Because the difference between Kokomi and Shinobu is the frequency basically. Now, in fact, if I assume a wheel that gets C4 Yelan also has C6 Shinobu, which is a relatively fair assumption per se, the heals go to 3.7 to 3.9k, which is closing in on the 4k minimum, right? And this amount, 4k times 8 means that you heal 32k. So it's fairly decent, really. It's a decent amount of heal. Okay. So now let's go to the TLDR itself. Going full DPS with PJC on Shinobu is actually better than I initially thought, with her damage on par slightly higher than C6 Fisher with Skyward Hub. The C6 Fisher attack prot needs to prot at least 15 to 20 times to be on par. Although your heals are sacrificed in return, 2.2 to 2.4k heals every 1.5 seconds. This is for the 4 Thunder Silver. If it's 2 Tenacity, 2 Thundering Fury, then it's 2.3 to 2.5k. So basically, you can go for a DPS build Shinobu if you have PJC for her and you don't mind the low heals. The downside is you need PJC. I mean, even I don't have PJC. Although PJC has appeared on 3 different banners, somehow it has always eluded me. Okay, so between the 2 top DPS artifact builds, 2 Thundering Fury, 2 Tenacity, and 4 Thunder Silver, the heals are inversely proportional to the damage, and it's just too small a difference really. So which to use really depends on which battle artifact roles you have. But I will lean towards 2 Thundering Fury and 2 Tenacity since it doesn't have any conditions unlike 4 Thunder Silver. Now, if you are wheel with C4 Yelan and C6 Shinobu, even in a Shinobu DPS build, her heals are only slightly below the 4k minimum, so I think it's worthwhile going for. Especially if you are willing to go from 6k to heal, 6k heal to 4k heal when we compare it versus, when we compare Shinobu HP support build versus DPS build. So in other words, right, basically if you're a wheel, right, the start DPS build is better. Let me simply put it that way. But if you're not a wheel and you're willing to accept 2k plus heals every 1.5 seconds, then, you know, if you don't think that you need more heals than this, by all means build a full DPS build on Shinobu. it will still give you an overall bigger team impact, to be honest. Okay. Now, as I've mentioned earlier as well, her heals proc every 1.5 seconds for 8 times, 10 times at C2, while Kokomi procs every 2 seconds for 6 times, which is 12 seconds as well, same as her pre-C2. Although for Kokomi, yes, you can do the extension, but you do need to build some ER on your Kokomi if you want to be able to extend it every single time. Every 2 is basically. So Shinobu has a more consistent and higher frequency of heals, so that's why it may be acceptable to accept a low heal. So I just want to point this out for you to factor in your decision. But generally speaking, given how bad the two earlier math guys were performing, I honestly think that a DPS build may be better on Shinobu. Maybe more worthwhile in terms of the overall team impact that it provides. But the most important is, of course, you have to accept that you are okay with lower heals, because not everyone is a high heal. Alright, so different people have different heal requirements. Like some players, they don't need to see their characters being at full HP all the time. Then if that's the case, you don't need high heals, right? So that's why I say it's really up to your playstyle. But for me, right, because I don't have PJC, I have a bit of a dilemma on what build to go for her. But I'll probably take more time to think about it, since we still have a lot of time until Shinobu is released anyway. If she is to be on the second wave of version 2.7. Okay? I may eventually go for a DPS build. Because, yeah, based on the math, that is the better build to go for. If you can accept the lower heals. Okay, I must always say this, if you can accept the lower heals. Because for some folks, maybe you don't like the low heal, you want high heal, then go ahead and do HP support build. But I've realized that generally speaking, even for my own characters, right, I have been kind of lowering the heals in favor for them doing other stuff to the team. So take for example Bennett. I also lowered my Bennett heals in order for him to do more DPS, because I realized his DPS is actually quite alright. Like on his burst, he can hit like 40k. On his E, he can also hit 5 digit. So it's not too bad. Diona, likewise, I lowered her heal by going for HP Circlet, because I wanted her shield to be stronger. For Kokomi, I also went Tenacity instead of Clam, because I wanted her to be a buffer. Okay, so I hope this is just something I want to share personally. I find that don't really need that much heals, although it's really lower than what I'm used to. Like my banner is 4k heal, right? My Kokomi definitely heals more than 4k every tick. But like I said, 4k is like a minimum. But if your own minimum threshold is lower, then by all means go ahead. Okay. So this is the Shinobu video series. We have completed Iron Steel, completed PJC. We have also completed Favonius. Yeah, maybe I should add that in. So next Shinobu video may be either Ayato Taser Com or maybe a 4-star weapon for her DPS build. But for me personally, we will resume Yelan video after this. Sorry. We will resume the Yelan video after this, and it's probably going to be a very quick update on the final changes in the beta for Yelan before I do the weapon comparison for her, or the specific weapon math, which will be Favonius versus Sacrificial Bull. Alright? Okay, so I hope that's clear. In case you're expecting for the weapon math, it is going to come. It's not going to be the first Yelan video after this video. It's going to be the second Yelan video. The first Yelan video is going to be about the last round of changes for Yelan. It is buffs for her, but unfortunately it's at the constellation levels. So if you're F2P player, unfortunately the changes don't really help you per se. But yeah, that's how it is. That's the design that they have gone for. So thanks everyone for watching. If you like the content, remember my video, click subscribe for more. Bye.